Hi Sue, very good to see you. How are you?
I'm very good, Mike, and thank you very much for inviting me here today. Looking forward to this.
That's a pleasure. So we've got Sue here today as part of the Piscari Insights series, just like fascinating people that are leaders in their field that we talk to around some specific questions. So just before we kind of get started, Sue, just like a bit about your background and what you do and what Priddey Marketing does.
Absolutely. We are a marketing company and we specialise in working with scientists and engineers. So particularly supporting science, technology, engineering, mathematics and manufacturing companies with improving their focus, route to market, and with their internal processes as well, so that if they're ready for ambitious growth, we help them put their systems in place for that.
Very good. And how long have you been doing that kind of work?
Personally, I've been in sales and marketing myself for far too many years, 30 plus years, and worked across all different sectors. I've specialised in science and tech more in the last 5 to 6 years. The reason for that is that I found myself, I'm sitting in Oxfordshire, and I found myself working with a lot of clients in those areas, and it's exciting working with innovation, advanced manufacturing, people who are they've got a purpose to the business.
Absolutely.
So this is why I specialise, and then the company specialises in this area now.
I mean, it takes me back. I mean, my start in life was as an engineer. So I used to work for a company called Ferranti, who were an electronics engineering company back in the day. And I left school at 16, did my apprenticeship in engineering, and worked in engineering for, about probably 15 years, more. And I loved engineering. Even to this day, I still like building things. And with my son, we love building things together. I think he loves it because I love it, it never leaves you. That fascination with how do you solve difficult problems with technology, I think is fascinating. I always have done.
And do you know what? I think my clients are so much smarter than me because they're the ones who solve those problems.
Yeah.
My challenge is always to understand what it is they do and why, what's the benefit of it. So my role is to communicate it to an audience that's not a specialist audience, it's a commercial audience.
I think that's
and
a
I
great
feel my
point,
job's
Sue.
done. Yeah.
No, it's a great job because, years ago, I used to watch a series called The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Oh, I love that, yes.
And it had the Babelfish, which was the translator. And I often think your kind of role is that translation between the technologist who has solved a complex problem and the market that may not understand how that technology is communicating.
Yes,
and I think that's
absolutely.
a fascinating process.
Yeah, it is.
So, let's get into the questions, shall we? So, I'm conscious also of your time. So, interesting question when we talked before. Can you talk about the importance of diversity of thinking as part of diversity and inclusion and how it relates to kind of content-based marketing?
Yes. Now, this is something that we were discussing before, which was around the general diversity conversation.
Yeah.
And working with the sectors and the intelligent people that I work with, you get challenged. And one of my clients challenged me saying, well, I don't want to be forced to create a diverse workforce to hit some sort of government quota. What's important to me is that I have the right people for the job, which got me thinking about what we really mean by diversity. And so I'm a great proponent of a diverse workplace. And, if you read back, McKinsey have been writing reports on this for a while about how a more diverse population, senior team and lower down team creates a more profitable business, a more successful business. Yeah. But it got me thinking that actually it's not just about gender diversity. It's not just about cultural diversity or race diversity. It's actually about socioeconomics, your background, where you've come from, your attitude, your mindset, and being having a team that can challenge and come at things from a different point of view. And we all fall into the trap of gathering people around us who are like us.
We do, absolutely, yeah, and it's a real danger, and it's an unconscious danger that most of us. I fall into it. I looked at who I'm interviewing. I looked at the types of people, and I went, "Is this really a diverse range of people? Am I getting diverse thinking in?" And it made me think, I need to change the kind of people that I'm talking to try and get more diversity in. It's an important point. That diversity of thinking.
Exactly, that diversity of thinking, and in communications, which is what I'm essentially doing, helping people with. I remember some years back being rather sniffy about social media and people, the young generation on their gadgets, not paying attention. And I went to a presentation which was run by the Institute of Directors. And the presenter there, she, I wish I could remember her name, she presented that actually she went to the theatre in the days when you could. Yes. Hopefully we'll be back there soon.
I hope so, yes.
Oh, yeah. She went to the theatre with her daughter, and they were watching a play, and she was annoyed to see her daughter on her phone. And so she, get off your phone, watch this, what are you doing? And the daughter says, I'm sharing with my friends what I'm seeing.
Right.
Now, that is showing so actually that is inclusion, that is having communication in a different format. It makes you think it's a generation thing as well, about the way that we consume information, the way that we communicate. And just because it's different doesn't mean to say it's wrong. So that diversity and being open and being open to challenge, I think is actually where we need to be thinking in terms of diversity and equality.
Yeah, and this is quite a big theme for me as well in terms of I've never thought of it as being a theme for me, but it is in terms of my background. I work with all sorts of people, all sorts of organisations now. And I left school at 16. I didn't do A-levels. I did my degree later in life. I started my degree when I was 21, having done my work experience, and then did a master's degree later on in life. I've worked in banking, I've worked in marketing, I've worked in engineering, so I've got a very process-oriented, mathematical kind of mindset. And I work with a lot of creative agencies, marketing agencies. And so where I find the interesting overlap is the creative mind around how do you solve a marketing problem creatively, and they're trying to build their business, bringing in a process kind of mind and a mathematical mind and someone that's not gone through as formal an education as most, bring that thinking together and you can create something amazing.
Yeah.
Because you challenge each other's thinking. Yeah. But an interesting point you raised, Sue, about challenging thinking. The receiver has to be open to being challenged.
Absolutely.
What are your views on that and experiences on that?
Yeah, I mean, mindset of the business leader has huge impact on business, and this is another thing with the pandemic. I mean, you and I were used to having to think, where's my next piece of business coming from?
That's right, we are.
What thinking ahead, being strategic, it becomes a natural part of running a business.
It does.
For quite a few people who are salaried and not used to having to do that, that was very challenging. But even more so, if the reason for a business is purely financial, purely to make a profit, then when that obvious income stream disappears, and for so many businesses it just went like that overnight with the pandemic, what's the reason for being in business?
What's the reason for being?
What's the reason for being? And if your team has no vision, you're not giving your team a vision and a reason for being, a purpose, then they won't pull together. They won't necessarily, they'll look to you for answers, but they won't help you with any solutions. And that is the difference between, the rise in the B Corp which is working business that's commercial but working also for a greater purpose, as well as often the mission and the vision of the business itself, but it's also about the greater community. And where's all the investment going at the moment? It's going toward businesses who are providing a difference to the future of the world. Yes, so sustainability, life sciences, environmental, and that's because there's a purpose. There's more to them than simply as previously, with is it Milton Friedman?
Friedman,
who said, the business of business is to support the shareholders. I would challenge that.
Absolutely.
So that purpose driven, and again, when you're in this mindset of we're trying to achieve something other than turning a profit.
Yes.
It's so much more exciting to communicate. It's so much more exciting to be involved in. You pull together when times are tough.
Yeah.
And with our young generation who vote with their feet when they're not happy in a business.
They do.
They're actively looking for businesses that have more to them than purely we'll pay you money each month.
There was a great piece of research. I've forgotten who the guy was. It was a TED Talk recently. And he did a lot of research into why do people go to work.
Okay.
And there were 3 big themes that came out. Purpose, autonomy, mastery.
Yeah.
He said as long as you're paying people in the kind of upper quartile of what they'd expect to get paid for that kind of role, and in fact in some cases money's completely irrelevant if it's about the purpose or the mastery, and they want access to an organisation that has got amazing purpose or allows you to master your craft, money becomes a quite secondary issue. I think it's really important. He's saying that if you lack purpose as a business, then don't be surprised, as you say, when the profits dry up, well, people will leave because there's nothing to anchor them. There's nothing to bring them together. There's no raison d'etre. There's no reason for being. I can see it in my son. I see it in my young son. I see it in him he's 8, and I see it in him about what he talks about.
Yeah.
He doesn't talk about profit and making money. He talks about, pluglution, about plastic bags everywhere.
Yes. Yeah. My kids are 11 and 14 and just like your son, they're really switched on. And as much as I get frustrated with them being on their iPads, iPhones the whole time.
Drives me mad.
But my son, in particular, he's a sponge, and he will just tell me stuff that he's picked up on channels, social media channels that he's allowed to watch.
Exactly.
He's so much better informed and engaged with what's going on around him, and of course, schools, education. They're more engaged as well.
They are.
So I think this diversity it's about thinking where are the gaps in my knowledge and my understanding, and who can challenge in the right way, who has the same purpose and vision as I, that I want to work with, because work should be enjoyable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, interesting. My wife was saying the other day, because we've got a home office. We're very lucky. We made a home office.
And you've got that beautiful wall behind you as well. It's fantastic.
And this is my wife's creation. She's an interior designer, and she found this amazing piece of wall art, which is preserved moss, which looks amazing, and is natural, which is great. But she was saying that because she hears me talking and doing these interview series, she says it's clear that you love what you do. And we may not make the most money in the world, but I do enjoy going to the office, and I love talking to people like you, Sue, because I learn something. Every time I learn something new.
Yeah,
and that's so
me too,
important
Mike.
to me.
Yeah, and I think this is the thing, isn't it? When lockdown started, I ended up working with quite a few people pro bono just to help them navigate what was going on. And but every time I don't, pro bono is an interesting phrase because you always learn.
You do.
And you've always got things to talk about, examples that you can share with other people, and also reassure other people that, they feel the same. Nobody's got it sorted. Yeah. Nobody's got a perfect business. There are always things that happen along the way to throw you off kilter. Yeah. And that, there are people who, you find the right people who will work with you and help you through it in a sympathetic way, but also in a challenging way.
A challenging way, absolutely.
To move you forward. Then that really makes it worth going to work. It makes it worth getting involved, doesn't it?
It does. And that leads us nicely into the next question, which is around, just talk about the importance of kind of like building your network, maintaining your network to avoid the feast and famine. So how does that work for you?
Yeah, it's a really good question, that, Mike. And do you know what? If I'm honest, I don't think you can ever totally avoid feast and famine.
No.
But there are things that you can do. I think that particularly with the clients I work with, it's more that feeling of being out of control and the anxiety of not quite knowing what's around the corner. So a lot of feeling more in control and feeling like you have a pipeline, knowing that you've got a pipeline, that you're doing things proactively to bring in business is part of the solution. Yeah. And and also, if you've been in business long enough, you recognise the signs and things turn up. It's just been open to those opportunities. But there are definite things that you can do to make sure that you have a pipeline, that you have activities that attract the right sort of clients to you. And I think this is one of the big tips about feast and famine is I work with quite a lot of early stage companies,
right,
or encounter quite a lot. And one of my first questions will be, well, that sounds great. Who's it for? Who's the innovation for? What's the benefit going to be for what you're doing? And when you hear this standard response of, well, it's so brilliant, anybody and everybody will benefit from this, that's a big red flag.
It is.
And that's at the crux of a lot of feast and famine, is not being focused on your target market and being true to that. Yeah. And customer discovery, constantly learning about who you ideally want to work with.
This is great, Sue. This is really good, this bit. So just give some examples of why that is so important and about how you do that, about the focus, the importance of the niche, the constantly understanding the real customer needs, the problems you're trying to solve. Just talk about anything that you've got about examples of that.
It's absolutely fundamental. It's absolutely fundamental to your business and to your marketing. It's when we start a business, the answer is yes. We say yes to everything and we just gather everything together. And then we become, if we're lucky, we become busy fools.
Exactly.
If we're unlucky, we go, why is nobody coming? I've created my field of dreams. Why is nobody
build it and
appearing?
They come. Exactly.
Yeah,
yes.
Exactly. So usually most people have had to go through that process to recognise that that's not sustainable.
Yeah. And you have to you're almost like, you have to go through the experience. Reading it in a book doesn't work.
No.
Until you experience it and go, okay, I'm just being a busy fool. And I've been there very recently going, wait a minute. Yeah. Why is my day full but my pipeline's empty? That's my fault.
It. Why am I busy and I'm not getting any income in?
Yeah. Absolutely.
And we've all been there. And this is the thing, and this was with lockdown. I think most of us went, whoa.
Yeah.
Either I'm too busy or I'm not busy at all. What's going on? And so the way to navigate that is to understand where your customers are now and what they're looking for now. And it will change for everybody because the whole world has changed. So it will
Yep.
subtly change for everybody. And it's fundamental because once you're really clear about who your target market is, and I mean getting it down to one profile is
Right.
is the ideal, one ideal
persona.
client, one persona, one avatar, ideal client, whatever you
Whatever
want to
you
call
call
it.
it. Yeah.
The large companies, they maybe have a few more, but for most businesses, one or maybe two is spot on. And it's something that most of us neglect. But once we've got that piece right, it makes decision making so much easier.
It does.
It makes your communication so much easier. It makes
your
the way
targeting
that you
easier.
communicate.
You know who you're
targeting.
looking for.
Yeah, exactly. And you get closer to those sorts of people so that you turn to them and they turn to you in times of crisis. A good example, actually, before all of this craziness happened, I was working with a client who we'd worked out their ideal client. They're in IT services.
Right.
And we'd worked out their ideal client with the whole team, because that's the other thing, is about not just doing it. The senior can start, but it needs to involve the whole company, because you can sabotage your good work so easily by somebody, not understanding that this is the sort of business we're trying to attract, and this is the sort of person we're trying to work with.
And when they bump into people socially,
when they bump in,
it's like, who do you work with? If they don't know.
So
you've lost
getting
an
that
opportunity.
Well, this is it. So doing that piece of work so that everyone says the same thing when they're bumping into people, and everyone's proud of the business that they work with. Everybody is an advocate for your business. Doing that piece of work can pay dividends later. And this particular instance, I had this client where we'd solved who their ideal client was, and we'd solved how we were going to describe. And these quality IT services companies, so not a commodity, but providing full support, and we'd agreed. We'd even given this person a name. It's really good, actually. Some of my clients have some really funny names for their personas. It's hilarious. But it so happened that an opportunity passed through, and it was for a large contract over a number of business centres. Now, the time that they wanted to meet to assess my client's company happened to be when my MD wasn't there.
Right.
Couldn't be there. It was actually because his mother had died. He had to deal with her estate, and he booked time off to do it. He couldn't physically be there. So the first warning sign was the fact that this other company, the prospect company, wouldn't change the date.
Yep.
So that's not a partnership. That's not necessarily,
no empathy
their time
for a
scales.
situation. Exactly.
Yeah. But you kind of put that to one side. So in the end, we agreed that I would hold the meeting along with the MD's number two, would be in the meeting, and I would sit there and observe and support him if need be. And almost within the first minute, we were able to qualify this prospect out. It would have made a lot of money financially, brought in a lot of money financially, but almost within the first minute, the guy turned up and said, well, IT is a commodity, so we expect you to do this, that, and the other.
Wow.
So we were very polite. We went through the interview, let them leave. Obviously spoke to the MD straight away after this and called him up and said, go. And all we needed to say was, he described what we do as a commodity.
Exactly.
And he just said, fine.
Yeah, they're not the client we want.
Fine.
We're not right for them, they're not right for us.
And we just knew that the way they were treating us, they'd have brought in a lot of money, but they'd have cost a lot of money to service.
Exactly right. And they're not referenceable. So you end up with this client that you make money from, but they're not referenceable. No. They absorb all your time and effort. You build unique things for them that you'll never use again. And it's a distraction. It's the shiny thing, distraction.
Yeah. But the fact that we'd done that work beforehand meant that both the CEO and the CTO were in total agreement. There was no argument. They didn't spend ages, as they would have done in the past, saying, well, should we, shouldn't we, should we go after this? Is it? It was just, they were able to move on and win a different contract with the right kind of client.
Exactly.
So that feast and famine that we touched on is really, it's about understanding what you're about, who you're trying to attract, and then setting up channels and messaging and tactics that specifically communicate with that ideal person.
Exactly.
And being able to it empowers the whole organisation as well to look for the right sort of person to partner with.
Brilliant. Sue, I'm very conscious of your time. So I think at that point, let's kind of draw it together. I've really enjoyed this. I love the piece about the diversity of thinking and about the niche. I think it's really, really important that people niche down. So where can people find out more about you?
Well, the simplest place would be to visit my website, which is priddeymarketing.co.uk. It's Priddey.
Yeah.
And I'd be very welcome. It would be great to hear from anybody who's interested in learning more about how I might be able to help them, or connect them with other people who also specialise within science and tech who could help them, because I have a network of people around me in other areas, such as yourself, Mike,
exactly.
who I can refer people to.
Sue, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you ever so much.
Thank you so much, Mike. I've really enjoyed it.
Brilliant.